It's good morning to Bruce Lowry. Thanks for joining us here at Yellow Shelf.
Well, good morning to you too, Joanna. It's great to be here.
Bruce, it's great to be back because you are a returning author to Yellow Shelf. Yay.
Yes, it's a strange feeling coming out with a second book.
It
The
is.
first one was really exciting, and this one's equally as exciting again. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and congrats. The new book is called Out of Time. It is the sequel to the first book that we interviewed you on, which was called Catch the Wind. So, Bruce, tell us all about the new book. What do we need to know?
Yeah, well, as you probably remember, Joanna, that the first book, Catch the Wind, was set in 1968. And it was a dust up with my then girlfriend, and I was quite heartbroken and took off to outback South Australia and the far northwest of Australia as well. And I got lost up there for many months, having quite some exciting adventures. Um, and the conclusion of that book was where I felt really quite anxious about the lost love back home. And so this new sequel, Out of Time, Roaring into Queensland in '69, takes me back from Western Australia to try and elope with my estranged girlfriend.
Yeah.
And I took quite some risks in trying to persuade her to elope with me. Probably far too ambitious when I think about it. And I didn't quite succeed. I got very, very close, but I didn't quite succeed. So I ended up drowning my sorrows at a pub in Mount Dandenong. Bumped into an acquaintance that I hadn't seen for many years, a guy called Greg Fanning. And he said, "Well, I'm heading up to Queensland tomorrow. I'm now a shearer." And I said, "Well, that's interesting." I said, "Do you think I get a job up there in the shearing sheds?" He said, "I can't guarantee that." I said, "Well, could I come with you to try?" He said, "Fine. If you dip in for the petrol, well, then we'll go up together." So the very next morning, 6:30 in the morning, I was off to the shearing sheds in far west Queensland.
Wow, that's north, isn't it? Uh, Bruce, what I love about your books is, this idea of your traveling stories, your sense of adventure, maybe even your sense of naivety. There's a real, connection in hearing those stories. Tell us about what inspired you. I mean, even reflect on your initial book of Catch the Wind. What inspired you to start writing? I know you'd had a career as a professional after those years. So what inspired you to kind of jump in and become a writer?
Well, the anecdotes and stories from this period, 1968 and 1969, when I was 18 years of age, have just been stuck in my head. And I've dined out on them a few times, and they all seem to go well at parties and the like. So I thought, well, I need to get this stuff out and put it onto the page. And fortunately, I had diaries, I had letters that I'd kept all those years, and that gave me every bit of information I needed to keep the narrative running in the right direction. And so I started the process, enjoyed it immensely. It was fantastic.
Yeah. And Bruce, I touched on that, yeah, after these adventures, in your late teens, early 20s, you went on to be a professional, and then you're an author. Tell us about that background, that in between before you became an author. Tell us about you.
Yeah, I after the adventures that I portrayed in this book, I decided I needed to get a career going, and tried numerous places, and they weren't particularly interested in a young bloke that had been tottering around
Yeah.
the Australian bush. But eventually, they gave me a tryout at a company called AGFA, who are an imaging company, and I started as the office boy and stayed there for almost 40 years. And
Wow.
so it was a great career to have, and so I enjoyed that. At the end of that, I managed to do some leadership training, some sales training, a whole host of things where I was able to put back into the community. And so that's been my life since that time. But going back to that time in the '60s, it really was a fascinating time. It was a time of great transformation. the periods leading up to the late 60s, where we'd had the recession in the 30s, the World War, the Second World War in the 40s. So understandably, a lot of Australians were very, very conservative going through the late 50s and into the 60s. And then came along us baby boomers, and we wanted to make some changes. Yeah. And changes were coming thick and fast. Music was changing.
Yeah.
Rock and roll had been around for a fair while, but it had started to get a harder edge, a bluesier edge to it. Fashions were changing. Us young blokes were growing our hair long, and of course the fashions of the time were changing too. Bell-bottom trousers and outrageous things to wear. All led from Carnaby Street in the UK, of course, but it was a fascinating time.
Yes.
And of course, the birth control pill had just been introduced a couple of years previously, so there was a bit of sexual liberation going on as well. So it was a fun time to be around, I can assure you.
Yeah.
And all of these changes were happening in the big cities of Australia, without doubt, and it wasn't so unusual to see blokes like myself getting around in the attitude that we had of transforming things. But when you went to the outback, now that was completely different. It was like stepping back into the 50s. And then when you went to the shearing sheds, it was like going back to the 1800s. Nothing had changed, I think, from that time, or very little anyway. So there was quite a juxtaposition of this young guy with a progressive attitude arriving in the shearing sheds, and I must have looked like a Martian to them because they treated me like that initially, I can tell you.
Yeah. And Bruce, tell us about the cover of the book. I don't have it here in front of me, but is it a photo of you hitchhiking? Is that what? Yeah.
There it is. It is. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
It is precisely that. I had a mate take a photograph of me when I was briefly at home in between my travels, and it came up okay. And when I passed it over to my publishers, Hembury Books, they said, "Yeah, that's a good one to use."
Yeah, no, very visual. I love it. It kind of sums up that curiosity of, hey, what's Bruce up to? So, yeah, Bruce, well done on the book.
Well, thank you very much. It's the thing that made the whole book really interesting was the characters that I met along the way.
Yeah.
There was lots of them were very, very interesting. In fact, all of them were interesting. Some of them in a pleasant way, some of them not so pleasant. There was some brutal moments at times in my travels, particularly in the shearing shed, because the shearing sheds are very competitive places. I think they still are today, but in the 60s they were ultra competitive.
Yeah.
The main competition in the shearing shed is where who can shear the most sheep amongst the shearers, and that produces a gun shearer for every shed. But that competition, it spilled over to all of the rest of us, because I wasn't a shearer, I was a rouseabout. Yeah. And there was competition to see who could drive their cars fastest, who could eat the most food, almost anything. And of course, there was always one shed fighter. There was always somebody that wanted to claim that title of being the best fighter in the shed. And there was one in ours, a guy with the nickname of Knuckles. And I tried my best to stay out of his way for the weeks that I was in that particular shed. But of course, I couldn't avoid him. Eventually, we did get together in no uncertain terms, and had quite a brutal outcome between the two of us. So that's all in the book. And
it's all in the book. Yeah. Oh, look, well, people need to dive in and read. If people are curious, they can also catch our previous interview, Bruce, from earlier this year, Catch the Wind. And this book's the sequel. So really, they should buy both and just dive into both and hear about the adventures along the way. Congratulations, Bruce.
Well, thank you very much. And I should say that it's not difficult to find my book. Of course, the one of the easiest and quickest ways is to just order it through Amazon. But most bookstores can order it in as well. So there's lots of ways to get hold of the book. If you're unsure, or you'd like to contact me at all, I
Yes,
have a website,
I
and that is
know.
www.brucelowry, and the Lowry is spelled LOWERY.com. And you can contact me through that website, or you can look at more details about both books and things that are going on in my life that might be of interest.
Fabulous. Well, Bruce, yeah, that was going to be my last question, but you got to it because I love your website. It's really easy. The books are there. And I'll put that in the show notes to make it really easy for people to connect with you and the book.
Well, thanks very much, Joanna. It's very kind of you, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you again.
Oh,
It's always good
Bruce,
fun.
if there's another book in the future, you'll promise me you'll come back.
Oh, I do. I promise. Yes, absolutely.
Well, good luck with these books. It's been a big year for you, Bruce. I mean, are you just enjoy the ride of having two books out and what that entails? And I'd highly recommend everyone jump in.
Thank you, Joanna. I've enjoyed it very much, and I certainly will enjoy the publicity that surrounds getting a book out to market. It's good fun.
Yeah, isn't it? Well, enjoy. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Joe. Cheers now.
Cheers.
Bye.